Welcome to the Love What You Do podcast. I'm your host, Doug Shapiro. These are the conversations that open doors to what's possible when you love what you do. First album you ever bought?
Oh, see, wow. I remember 45s. I bought a 45 and it was I Want You Back, the Jackson 5.
Oh, nice.
Because that was my first concert with my parents.
And so you have to have the album.
I honestly don't know if I had the album. I remember a vast collection of 45s. My parents had great albums. I don't think I ever, so now I'm trying to even remember ever, but it was much later in life that I actually purchased, probably because I had no money, but my parents would buy me 45s. But I bought an Etta James album.
Nice.
With babysitting money when I was 12.
That's awesome that you were hustling at 12, you know, like that's the awesome part.
I was a working woman at 12.
All right, here, since you're into your 12-year-old self here right now, favorite outfit that you can remember as a kid?
Favorite outfit when I was 12 had to be these badass orange corduroy pants.
Nice. You have to have some photos in those, right?
They probably are tucked away in a shoebox, never to see the light of day. It gets better, Doug, though. There were orange corduroy pants and a matching vest.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm. So the vest was also corduroy?
Absolutely.
That is awesome.
It was corduroy on corduroy that I wore over orangish, it was the 70s, so an orangish turtleneck. So, you know, nice. Turtleneck and corduroy and probably some god-awful shoes.
All right, last warm-up. You don't need a warm-up, but here. Career theme song.
Oh.
This has stumped the most people. This is the one people struggled with.
Oh, man. Wow. That is
I know.
What's
someone
yours?
turned it. Yep, I was hoping you wouldn't do that. Someone asked me yesterday, 2 days ago, when I was kind of one of these questions, they turned it around and I was like, and then I ended up saying like Queen, like some Queen song or something. I don't remember. I was like so disappointed in my answer. I was like, that is not at all what my career theme song would be, but I just couldn't think.
Wow.
That seems to be the hardest question for everybody.
And I wonder why.
I don't know. All right, well.
I'm stumped. I'll have to think about that one. I'll get back to you in weeks on that one.
Well, welcome to the Love What You Do podcast, Cheryl.
Excited.
CEO of IIDA. We were at an event together in January, your event.
We were, Industry Roundtable.
Yes, and there was a magician, and she asked a question to us all. What's your superpower? And I'm not going to ask you, but I'm going to tell you one of yours.
Oh, okay. Even better.
One of your superpowers is questions. I think, and I don't know if there's a more important superpower today, honestly, than questions. But it is absolutely one of your superpowers. So when I asked you for some ideas, just a few questions that might help us think differently, you gave me a list.
I gave you a list, indeed.
These are really good questions. So I'm going to jump into those.
Okay.
I'm going to start with what I thought might be the easiest one. Perhaps it's the hardest, though. I don't know. What's it like being you right now?
That is the hardest question. You zeroed right in on that one. And I love that question because often when you ask that question of somebody, they'll project, right? And they will tell you what it's like being someone else. It is comfortably uncomfortable being me right now.
Huh. Meaning that you've gotten used to being uncomfortable?
Yes, I have gotten accustomed to being uncomfortable. I sometimes have this sense that if I'm too comfortable, that equates to complacence. And that means I'm not doing something or not doing enough of something. And so if I'm slightly uncomfortable, it means that I still have work to do. So there's that internal piece. The tenor of the times is just, uncomfortable.
Sure.
And I think that I've come across in the last couple of years people who generally feel uncomfortable. And so there is this part of me that wants to nurture and comfort. And so I feel like I'm doing a lot of that these days, and it takes a lot out of me. So there is this depletion moment,
Mm.
but I can't stand to see a question unanswered or a person not satisfied or a situation that doesn't need to be buttoned up or tied up. So it's been comfortably uncomfortable because I like doing those things.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I have to ask just because there's a component of the question, what's it like being you right now? And I have to wonder, like, was there an era that you in your life that was like the comfortable era?
Ooh, I think a comfortable era for me was when my children were younger
Mm.
and I was full on mom. I was still working, but I was in the zone of being full on mom. And I was surprised by that because I didn't know that I would love it so much. And I think, a lot of women struggle with that too.
Yeah.
But I was doing the thing. They were thriving. I was working, home was happy, work was happy. And it was one of those moments where, oddly enough, I was expecting it to be difficult, right? I was thinking I was going to be having all of the balls in the air. And then I realized it's like, ooh, I like juggling. I like doing this.
I wonder if like purpose has like if there's a component of purpose in this equation of comfort.
I think so. And retrospectively, when I've thought about this, I felt like I was raising IIDA at the same time I was raising my children.
Wow.
And so the two things, motherhood and CEOhood, if that's a word, combined and converged and conflated with one another. And it was a really interesting thing for me to watch this organization grow up as I was watching my children grow up.
There's just hearing you talk about comfort, there was a question you asked about comfort and safety, whether they're the same thing, whether they're related. Is this something you're exploring in your mind?
I am. I find the connection between comfort and safety fascinating, and I think it is the world that designers delve in a lot. And so the question I ask myself, is it possible to feel comfortable if you're not feeling safe in any way, shape, or form? And is it possible to feel safe if you are uncomfortable? And do the two require one another in some intrinsic, deep way? And I'm not sure that I know the answer. I think the easy answer is you must have one to have the other, but that feels too easy.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, that's the kind of question that, like, just the nature of exploring that question could unlock some new ideas or some new ways of thinking about the role of one or the other.
Right, right. And I think at this moment in time, whether it's culturally or socially or politically or even with physical health, I think we're having an interesting moment where comfort is not necessarily the order of the day,
Mm,
nor is safety. We worry about our physical safety, we worry about our psychological safety, our emotional safety, our data safety and security. There are a
it's true.
lot of components to safety that I think occupy a fair amount of mind share. And I also worry about the guilt sometimes that
Mm.
comes with when people feel comfortable. It's like, oh, am I too comfortable? A little bit, like for me, that kicks in. It's like almost you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like if things are going too well, it's like, oh, hell no, what's coming around the pike?
This is interesting, this idea of guilt and comfort.
Yeah.
Like, I wonder if that happens to, I mean, like, I've been in situations where I feel like I don't deserve something.
It's a little bit, right? It's obviously maybe a little bit tied in with imposter syndrome
Yeah.
too, when people start asking themselves, do I deserve this? Should I have this? And it comes up a lot for me. I have this conversation a lot with people that, we do see so much sadness and oppression and deficiencies in our world. And then when all of a sudden you have something, you feel guilty that the person sitting next to you may not have that same comfort and safety and access, right? We think of all the things that we have. And I think so many of us are good, kind-hearted people that we want to share. Can you share comfort?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, maybe a smile is sometimes
Right.
maybe the
Right.
easiest way to get started.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
because what makes me comfortable may not make the person sitting next to me comfortable
That could
or
make someone
feeling safe.
uncomfortable. Though,
Right.
I mean,
Yeah, that's true. A random smile could,
ooh, yeah,
unless you're in the Midwest. Like we
that's
love
true.
we love random smiles in the Midwest.
That's so true. All right, so you spotlighted a little of today's uncertainty. I think you called it the tenor of the moment and the way it feels, and I think those words really captured that. So it's the right time for me to ask another question from your list here that I love. What do you have faith in?
So I have faith in design. That feels so obvious, but I do. I absolutely have faith in people who are thinking about and creating and crafting for other people. For me, that's a signal that a heart and a mind is in the right place. I have faith in optimism and that things will get better, or if they don't get better, we at least get beyond. I have faith in my family and my children and my husband, because if all else gets shot to hell, I still have my family.
I go back to that so often, like personally.
Yeah.
Like I look at situations where I've messed up. Like, and I'm like, well, if everybody hates me and, I get fired or whatever.
Nobody hates you.
But you know what I'm
You're
saying?
Doug Shapiro.
I just know, like, I got that. I go back to that. I'm always going to be a hero there.
There you go.
Yeah.
I have faith in storytelling.
Ooh.
I think storytelling is a great talisman, even in bad times. It's something that we can turn to, whether it's you're listening to someone tell a story or you are telling your own story. And I wouldn't be me if I didn't have faith in books.
Yeah, no kidding. Faith in books, faith in puns.
Bad puns.
Words. Bad puns.
Yeah.
I didn't ask you this, but I love you always pick a word of the year. Well, you don't necessarily always pick one, but you spotlight word of the year. So you'll dial into Merriam-Webster or whatever and pick your word of the year. What do you think this year, 2025, what will the word of the year be? And you can't say tariff.
I can't. Okay, I can't, because I was totally going to say that. Unfortunately, on the negative side, I think that one of the words for this year will just be upheaval and uncertainty. Because from day to day, we don't have a sense of what's going to be next. Sometimes we don't even know what's now or next. So that's on the negative side. I will still lay faith and stock in optimism, because and I keep hearing it more and more. People seem to be leaning into optimism. They seem to be looking for optimism. I was on a flight and the people sitting behind me were talking about, what's the color of optimism? Ooh. I couldn't let that go. I had to turn around and have a whole chat. And so it ended up being this really fun conversation about color palette. And on the flight that we were on, right? Everything on a flight is blue or gray or dull. And so this particular passenger said, wouldn't it be great to just have a spot of color? The woman who was sitting on the other side, she said, and she was in her 70s, and she was talking about Braniff Airlines and how They were the airline that really introduced a lot of color in the flight attendant uniforms and on the exterior of the plane and on the interior. And so it ended up being this great conversation about now and how people wish that there were some signal, and color was the obvious one, some signal to tell us things will be okay.
Huh. I feel like color is it feels like a signal. I agree. When you were saying blue and gray and boring, I was like, oh great. I picked the right shirt for the day.
But it's and none of the folks were in design, and but it turns out the woman who was in her 70s, who had flown on Braniff, was a sociologist, and she was talking about. She said, we need color in our lives. It tells us how we might feel, which I thought was really interesting. She said. It tells us how we feel, it tells us how we might feel. It just sends this good signal. And so as we were deplaning, we all decided that the color of optimism is yellow.
I thought you were going to say that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I can't help but draw a connection between optimism and design. It feels like it's the bedrock of design. Do you want to talk about that connection a little bit?
It is, in my opinion, the most optimistic profession because of the investment in the human heart and the human soul. And designers are crafting and creating for how people are now and how they will be. And it just, for me, design means that you have ultimate faith in the human spirit. And to have ultimate faith in that human spirit, you're creating for the best of the human spirit. You're creating better places to maximize that brain and that heart and that soul. And whether it's a school, a classroom, or a dentist's office, or the workplace, you're believing that human beings will be their best at that moment in that place, or that place will leave a lasting impression with them. So it might impact them, but it might be a week later that they were in this special place.
Yeah, I feel like there's this connection of the profession and then even the designer themselves. In that moment, you can't help but bring your energy into your work. If you're you see it in art, you can look at the piece and you can say, well, I know I have a sense of how they felt when they made this.
Yeah.
And it probably inevitably happens in design, whether we like it or not.
It has to. And whether you call it energy or vibe or passion or talent, it is the ultimate of that human being who is in that creative moment creating for another human being or group of human beings. And so not only is design optimistic, it's altruistic too, because you're doing this for someone. And I know you've heard me say this before, but design is about what happens on the receiving end. And I think a lot of people think that design is about the designer, but it's about the people or groups of people or cultures or a society that receives that.
So 30 years CEOing. Forgot the phrase you used.
I like that. That's
your CEO-ness.
That's good verbing.
Has your definition of design changed?
I think that my awe and appreciation for design has expanded. When I started with IIDA, I remember feeling awestruck and humbled by design and what designers do. I am still awestruck and humbled by the work that they do, but also the sheer time that they manage to find to give to this organization called IIDA.
Ooh. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've been connected and there's definitely a feeling of being a part of something special.
Yeah.
I think there's actually a member right over here. We have a spectator today who I know feels the same.
She's a great example of a volunteer extraordinaire. And it's just, how does a person give so much to a career and to a family and to children, and then still have time to sit on a committee or lead an effort or manage people within the context of IIDA. That has really been the part that, again, awestruck and humbled are still my two words. And where do designers find the time? Because I still know that there are only 24 hours in a day.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
has not changed in 30 years. That has not changed.
You haven't cracked some code there.
No.
That would be nice, though.
That would be great to crack that code.
Yes. All right. I want to jump into some questions that'll just stretch our brains a little here.
Okay.
Let's talk about the future. Actually, it's kind of talking about the future from a point of view of today. 40 years from now, when people ask you about this moment in time, or ask anybody about this moment of time, how do we capture that?
How I would capture now, if I were talking about it, if somebody asked me about now, 40 years from now, there's a part of me that says we spent a fair amount of time looking for an outlet to charge our devices. Cord management was an issue. But I think that, like, this very moment coming out of O'Hare Airport and off a flight and having that conversation with that group of people in the 2 rows, I so enjoyed that because there was curiosity and there was civility. And I think those are 2 things that we lean into now. I think right now there's a moment where we're very curious. There's a lot of why this, and sometimes it's negative why. Why is this happening? Why is this happening to them? Or why is this happening to me? So there's the curiosity piece, but we're craving civility. And that goes back to that chaos and upheaval moment. I think that 40 years from now, who knows what technology will have shifted to or brought us or taken from us. But I think retrospectively now we'll feel like we were grappling with technology. But when hasn't humankind ever grappled with technology? Like, here's fire, here's a wheel, here's a printing press. We've always grappled with things that purportedly will make our lives better. But I think there's a huge grappling now that we will see 40 years from now. How did we manage it? Did we make the best of it? Did we make the worst of it? And then I think I will recall this moment as perhaps a return to what is essentially human. There seems to be, in thinking about humanity and emotional well-being, that this maybe was the moment, and maybe because of the pandemic, that we leaned into what does it mean to be human as a human, but then what does it mean to be part of a community? And how do we support that community? That was a lot.
It was a lot, but just thinking about, just listening to you speak, thinking about this question, it kind of forces us, the question itself forces us to, like, things that look big right now or that feel big, you realize, well, 40 years from now, no one would make a mention of that thing.
Right.
And it forces you to focus on, like, what are the big things that we're feeling or that are happening, the really big things. And like you said, it was like you took a conversation but you connected it to, like, a civility or like a movement.
Yeah.
Or something that's happening. And I think that's kind of what that question does for me.
Yeah. And that was interesting because we were 2 rows of 3. There were these 6 disparate people who did not know one another. Our only common thread was we were on a flight from Washington, D.C. to Chicago. And it was interesting because it was the color conversation that all of a sudden everybody had a thought about or an opinion about. And because it was a flight from Washington, D.C., you would think that the top of that conversation would have been about politics, but we could not have been further away from politics.
I wonder if anyone's had a conversation on a plane that has, like, gone 3 rows deep.
Ooh.
You know, like I could see a 2-row
Ooh.
convo, but like
A 3-row.
how big could the biggest conversation be on a plane? That
Yeah.
would be interesting.
That would be an interesting metric. It would mean that people in those subsequent 3rd row, 4th row have really good ears.
Yes.
So there is that.
Or these just people just too loud. Yeah.
Well, there is that too.
All right. This is kind of a fun question. You sent me 4 words: rules, protocols, standards, and rituals. I say those slowly because, you know, you must need to hear them twice to understand that there's subtle differences. Rules, standards, protocols, rituals. And then there are ones that motivate you. There are ones
That restrain you.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So, you know, what got you thinking about that? I mean, is this something that you're exploring in your life or work or?
A little bit. Rules, protocols, standards, rituals. I feel like so often we're governed by rules. We observe protocols. We're often beholden to standards, but rituals are the things that are closest to us. And maybe our heart obeys rituals, but our mind is fixated on rules and standards and protocols. Or those 3 things are something that other people impose on us, and rituals are something that we give ourselves. But the 4 things are fascinating in a lot of ways. I think it has everything to do maybe with how you grew up, or like I had 12 years of Catholic school, and so
There's a lot of rules.
a lot of rules, but there's a lot of ritual
Oh yeah,
too.
yeah.
But yeah, I'm probably going through a moment right now where I'm kind of examining, and I think we force some things on ourselves too. Like, I'm supposed to sound like this. I'm supposed to think like this. I'm supposed to dress like this. I might be like having a late midlife crisis or something, but these structures that are either set up for us or structures that we set up for ourselves, how do we operate within those structures? But then also what happens when you break them all down?
Yeah, I mean, actually, just the thought of knowing, like, there are structures that I put myself in. Like, wow, like I didn't know I was putting myself in a cage. You know, but I might be doing that.
Yeah. It's interesting because this idea of belonging and what we do to belong. And so you've got kids, you know that whether it's middle school and probably even younger, you know, kids will do whatever they need to do to, you know, be a part of the crowd, to belong. And that doesn't stop in middle school or high school. I think as we get older, it's that idea of how do we fit in? But then the flip side of that is thinking of all the ways we don't fit in. And, you know, but is fitting in a luxury or is it a trap?
Good question. It doesn't feel like a luxury.
It doesn't, but you know, we're in this moment now where we talk about design for belonging, and we walk into a space and we want to feel as if we belong. We want to look around and have some touchstones that tell us I belong here. So there are different levels, I think. There are different shades of belonging.
Yeah, so like fitting in to me feels different
Is
than belonging.
different than belonging.
It
Absolutely.
feels more
Yeah.
What's the word, like metamorphic?
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah,
you
you're
make an effort to
you're
fit in, but
Yes.
someone makes an effort to help you feel
right.
like you belong.
Yeah, you're contorting yourself in some way that's not true to you to fit in. And sometimes I think that happens consciously. I think that can happen unconsciously. But belonging is the other side of that coin, where it's positive and you
Yeah.
are belonging and you want to belong, and there's warmth associated with belonging, but then there is a coldness to fitting in.
It almost feels like belonging is something that has to happen to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you don't make that happen.
Right. But fitting in, you're making yourself do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. I know you and I can explore words. Uh, there's another subject that I think I'm deep into. So I'm
Okay.
curious to see where you take this around the basics of education. You had called out reading, writing, math, all the fundamentals. Is that, you know, where are we in the education journey with that being the core thing? Are we missing more of that? Do we need less of it? Or what is the thing?
Yeah, so those three things that, if you're a certain age, you grew up with, reading, writing, and arithmetic were kind of the basic competencies. And so it's a question that I'm asking myself yes, we do still need to read. Writing is incredibly important. And I guess math is too.
I like how you threw that in
Yeah, I know.
there. Yeah.
Okay, math. Since I was not a math nerd, love numbers, didn't like math. But what are the basic competencies for now and next? The ability to communicate will always be, I think, at the baseline competency that we should always be able to competently and confidently communicate with others. I think expression and self-expression will always matter. But there are some of those softer competencies that I wonder about, like the ability to read the room.
Yep.
And we did a webinar at IIDA last week around presentation skills. And reading the room came up in that. Particularly, we were talking about in sales and design, where you're doing a pitch, and what are the signals that you get that you're not engaging your audience. And so that recognition of what others are receiving or not receiving from you. I think that's a skill that will carry you well through life. Nobody teaches you that, though. That's one of those on-the-job things. And it does fit neatly into that bucket of presentation skills. I think there are other skills that fit in there as well. But is that something we need to do a better job of teaching children, students, how to present?
Yeah. I think presentation. I can't help but go to question asking. I feel like that is such a 180 from where we grew up with.
Right.
Unless you had like a really brilliant teacher that was working hard to infuse curiosity in you.
Yeah.
Where it's like, hey, read this chapter and I want to hear everybody's best question. It's
Yeah.
like that was never something you got.
It wasn't. The competency of curiosity. People think of it as a quality, but I believe that you can develop or uncover or unveil healthy curiosity. And so it's not just the asking of great questions, it's thinking of great questions. And so that exercise of thinking of 10 great questions, you may not know the answers to them, but what are 10 questions you would like to ask yourself or like to ask of anyone or ask of your parents? Like, I think that is an incredible skill set to have. To coin a phrase.
Yes, skill set. Nice drop.
Yeah, nice drop there.
It's always great to talk to another host too, because you just you know it, you get it. There was a comment you made. I don't remember when, but it stuck with me. This is not one of your questions, but I'm thinking about the title. Love what you do. I'm really personally drawn to it. You made a comment once. It's not your job's job to make you happy.
Oh.
And I hung on to that phrase.
Yeah.
Because, well, first of all, I kind of was like, I want to understand it. I want to think about it. And then, when you start to, I'm getting at something eventually, but, I start thinking about love what you do and what's at the core of that. And it's more about, seems like it's more about the person than the doing. But anyways, when did that come to you? Like, how did that surface?
So those are words of wisdom from Dorotha Stubblefield, my mom.
No way.
And I was in my early 20s and lamenting that I wish that I were happier at work. And she said, so do something about it. If you're not happy, are you not happy with the work? Are you not happy with the people? Are you not happy with the place? My mother was a scientist. You've heard me talk about her. So she was definitely all about delving into the why. And I guess I groused a little too much about my unhappiness. And that's when she said, it's not your job's job to make you happy. And she was super pragmatic and super logical, born in the 30s. And she firmly believed that work was work. Now, she loved her work. She was a passionate and inquisitive. She was a microbiologist. And so passionate and inquisitive, but she never believed that work should make you happy. If it did make you happy, that was an incredible byproduct, but not to take a job or work for the sole pursuit of happiness.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that, like with you, that stayed with me. And I wrestle with it still, because I don't think any of us want to do unsatisfying work.
I know that's the piece where I'm like,
But is the
I'm
purpose of that, right? The purpose on the 15th and the 30th, somebody remunerates you for the work that you're doing, which is great. If you happen to love the work and love the people, when it's one tidy package, it is amazing.
It is.
How often is it one tidy package? And so when one piece of that package does not work for you, what do people tend to do? If you're not making enough money, you will often go someplace else. Or if you're unhappy with the work that you're doing or unsatisfied, you will go someplace else. Have people left work simply because it doesn't fulfill their joy or their happiness? I wrestle with this all the time. And then given the life that I have at IIDA, where we talk about with our members work and workplace, this is something for more than 30 years, because I was in my 20s when my mom said this to me. It is something that I have, like, if I ever go back to school and get a PhD, that might be my thesis.
Yep. Yep. I mean, there's so much to unpack.
There is a lot
it's
there.
interesting that that was something you wrestled with or even still do. There's a lot to think about.
So what's your job's job is the question.
Ooh,
If your job's job is not to make you happy, if you don't subscribe to that, but what is your job's job?
that's good. That is a spiral.
Yeah.
We're in workplace. So let's get into my last big question. Let's talk about work and place and workplace. And which of those two things is it more of? Is it more about the work or more about the place?
I think it depends on the day of the week. I think it depends on the moment in your career. I think for so many of us who love what we do, it's the work. It's the work. Which feels like me being disingenuous to design, because I know how much the place is intrinsic to the work. And could I do the thing in the absence of an amazing place that supports the work? Maybe. Big old question mark at the end of that, maybe.
Sure.
When the place can incubate and support the work and the people and the purpose and the craft, it all becomes quite this beautiful thing. But I think there are people who can say they don't need the place, just give me the work.
Huh. Yeah, until they have the place.
Right.
And then they're like,
And then
this feels different.
all of a sudden, a light bulb goes off that's like, how have I been doing all of this work without this amazing place? Yeah, because we've seen that. We have the inordinate luxury and privilege and honor in this industry to know that work and place should be one word.
Yeah. It's hard also to go backwards in anything you do. It's hard, and when you experience something that unlocks a new level of, you know, joy or a new level of productivity or whatever it is, and then that's gone. That's hard.
I, in talking about workplace, I know that I could never work in a shitty place. I just couldn't. Because I know what it is like to work in a wonderfully beautiful, efficient, effective, functional space that makes me smile every time I walk into it. You've been into our
Oh
offices,
yeah.
like there's a feeling there that supports the work that we do, that is emblematic of who we do this work for, of an entire industry. I can't ever imagine unbundling those things. And so for me, workplace is this it's a bundle.
It's bundled. I like it. We need more. There's probably lots of good bundles out there.
There are some good bundles out there.
Peanut butter and jelly, who knows?
Exactly. Ham and cheese.
Go right to food. I go right to food every time. My wife and I were like, we live to eat. It's like we just like, I don't know.
Food is comfort. Food is safety.
Yeah, it's discovery.
It is. It brings. It's funny when we were talking about curiosity. Yes, it's ritual.
Yeah, it's ritual. Like I love making breakfast for my family. Like I can't wait to make breakfast in the morning.
There's meaning there. There is, food is love.
Yeah.
It's
Oh, my wife's lasagna.
Oh, there you go.
I can't, like, if she ever left me, the lasagna would break my heart.
And you don't have the recipe?
Oh, I know.
You probably can't make it the way that she makes it.
No, I can't. No one else loves it like I do, but I'm just like, I can't.
Yeah.
I just have to.
So I think food is a great metaphor.
It is. Cheryl, is there a good story you love to tell?
Oh.
Like what's a story that you've told lately that's like
you I love a good story.
And you're so good at them.
This a little bit ties into the belonging moment. I was with a group of people and we were talking about grandmothers. And many of us in the group have good memories of our grandmothers. We weren't, many of us had lost our grandmothers at an early age. And so my paternal grandmother in Toledo, Ohio, it was a ritual for us. I didn't realize it was a ritual at the time. It was just a thing that we did. But I would walk with her we'd go to the bank. And then as a special treat, she would take me to the library.
Oh, wow.
And it's funny because I told a little bit of the story when I interviewed Rebecca Walker. And just the quality of this time with my grandmother. And I was 4, no older than 5, because I hadn't started school. I had a late birthday and couldn't start kindergarten with everybody else, the curse of a December birthday. And so my grandmother had a deep distrust of banks, but she would bundle up cash and we would go to the bank and she would get dressed up. It was like a thing for her. And that was also when I became very aware of buildings, because we'd walk into this bank in downtown Toledo, Ohio, and the ceilings were high and the floors were marble and slippery, and it was just this very kind of, it inspired something in me, and I almost felt, and I would hold her hand. I remember snuggling very close to her, and there were guards all over the place. So we do the thing with money, and she'd talk to the teller, and back then the tellers were like almost behind a cage.
Yeah.
And there'd be this transaction going on, and then she'd look at me and say, okay, now we're gonna go to the library. And I got really excited because that's where books live. And one of my earliest memories of going to the library, and I was an only child and didn't spend a lot of time around other children. I spent most of my time with my parents and with my grandparents. We walk into the library and she walked me over to the children's section. And Miss Ruby was having reading circle. And so there were other kids there, and there may have been a school field trip. I vaguely remember these other children had name badges on. And my grandmother said, I'm going to leave you here with the other kids, and I'm going to go. I'm assuming she went to go get a book, but it wasn't until many years later I didn't realize my grandmother couldn't read. So I don't know what she did in the library, but she left me with these other kids. And Miss Ruby, who was easily one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen, I'm fairly convinced she was a combination of Eartha Kitt and Diane Carroll. Like, she turned around and she had this like bouffant hair, because it's the 60s. And she had this beautiful dress on. I remember the color of this dress. Her name was Miss Ruby, and it was this like ruby red scarlet dress that she had on. And she looked at me and she said, "Oh, welcome to Reading Circle." And she made this very elegant motion of her hand. And she said, "Come sit next to me." There were books, there were other kids, and somebody with this very seductive beckoning of her hand. I thought those were the most beautiful words. Come sit next to me.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And I remember being really excited, and she's holding a book in both hands. I don't remember what the story was. Vaguely, it could have been one of Aesop's fables, or it was mythology. She smelled good. There was this circle. She smelled like peppermint. So again, like, I don't know if I'd like later in life thought it was a red dress and she smelled like peppermint, but those words, "come sit next to me," I thought were it just felt beautiful.
It does.
And I was welcomed into this circle of kids who I didn't know, this woman I had never set eyes on in my life, and she invited me to sit next to her, and then she proceeded to read.
Wow.
And it was magical. And so now, whenever I see kids sitting in a circle, I always go back to that moment. And the floor smelled like honey. It was a polished wood floor. And I remember what it felt like sitting on that floor and touching the wood. I remember the little girl next to me was fidgeting a little bit, but she moved over to make room for me because she clearly prized her spot sitting next to Miss Ruby. And so she had to move over to make room for this stranger. But it was like the quality of that moment, which brought into play for me the visual of the library, the smell of the books, somebody reading, somebody welcoming me to sit next to them. There were so many layers in that moment that still kind of resonate for me now and cause me to think of things that I know are important in life and in work.
Wow.
Come sit next to me.
It's such a multi-sensory moment.
Yeah.
Not even just in a literal sense, right? The smells and the sights
Yeah.
and everything, but the emotions and, wow.
Yeah.
And you're right. What a great combination of words.
Yeah.
I'm going to use that on all my guests.
Come sit next to me. That would be a great name for a podcast, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would. Hey, there you go. That's your next one. You can hold it in a library.
Yeah.
You'll be shushed the whole time.
You'd be shushed. That would be true. But there's something super special about that. And I think the other, other than "I love you," the other beautiful phrase in the English language is "tell me a story."
Oh, yeah.
I think that's one of the most beautiful things you can ask someone to do. And then the person telling that story, it feels like you're giving someone a gift.
I love that. That connects me with my kids, that phrase.
Yeah.
Because that was the phrase I heard past tense.
Yeah.
Almost every night.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was my moment, that was kind of like my performance for them. So that really hits home. I wish I had that sort of memory. I don't know what I did wrong. Maybe I just was less aware, because I know I've had those moments, but it's hard for me to It's hard for me to remember it
to
in
pull
such
those
great
back.
detail. Yeah.
It's super sensorial for me. It's
Mm.
always a smell, or the texture of something. I find that those are those moments where I can best recall or remember. What's interesting, I had this conversation with my mom, that it wasn't always a feeling, right? People will remember something made me feel badly, or this hurt, or this made me laugh. But for me, it was always sensorial. The smell of a room, the taste of ice cream, the heat of a summer's day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh gosh, as soon as you said that, I could see myself with like a bomb pop,
See?
in the summertime.
Yeah.
And
And then you can hear the janky ice cream truck.
yes. Oh, you know what? The smell for me, it's suntan lotion. When
Oh,
I smell suntan lotion, it's like that was the one time of year we did a vacation, to a beach, usually New Jersey, you know.
there you go. The Jersey Shore.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that takes you, and I love that about those moments. They transport you someplace else.
Yeah.
Usually someplace good, not always. But just that sensorial moment that just all of a sudden you're there. That's what the immediacy of that. But it's like whenever I have peppermint or smell peppermint, that takes me right back to Miss Ruby.
Miss Ruby, that is so awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, that is, I mean, seriously, God bless Miss Ruby.
Yeah.
Cheryl, this has been a fantastic conversation. I knew it would be.
It's been
Um,
fun.
it has been. Thank you for being a part of this, really.
Thank you for asking me to be a part of it, and keep asking me for questions. I love sharing questions. So I'm just going to, whether you ask for them or not, I'm just going to send you
Please
questions.
do. We did it. That was really good. I mean, the
Yeah.
uncut, I don't know if there's anything to cut. Both of us, when you left, we did the same thing. We were like, I think we just run that.